Welcome.
Good evening. Welcome. Hi, Em. How are you?
I'm all right. How are you, Andy?
I'm absolutely spiffing, and I'll show my little jumper in a few minutes. Welcome, folks, to Life and Soul at Home at Christmas, or as Emma would say, at Advent. This is our chance to explore, to think about some of the meanings that we actually give to life, especially at Christmas time. This might be your first time you've joined us, or maybe you're a regular. The chat is there for you to add comments, to ask questions, to tell jokes if you like, whatever's actually going on with you, basically. So that'll be good. Emma, can we talk about your Christmas jumper first of all?
Absolutely. This is my favourite Christmas. Oh, get it right. This is my favourite Christmas jumper. Can you read it? The worst the right way around.
I can. Bar humbug. Yep, looks good to me. Looks good.
It's ironic. It's ironic because I love Christmas, so I don't feel bar humbug at all.
Fantastic. Well, last week I was a bit bar humbug because my wife's birthday hadn't happened, and in our house, as we said, until birthdays happen, we don't actually do Christmas. Well, Now we have the lights are in the window and in the garden, and we discovered the lights go off and come on by themselves during the day, which is quite good. My Christmas jumper here is white because we're doing angels tonight. I'm just going to show you what it says. Whether you can see that or not, I don't know. It's my Tesco's value Christmas jumper, quality guaranteed. And I discovered this a few years ago. I found a very similar Valentine's Day card for my wife. A Christmas or a Tesco's value Valentine's Day card, which I thought was very funny, and she wasn't that amused for some bizarre reason. No, but there we go. Yeah. So this is session 2. Tell us about session 1, Em.
In session 1, we were talking about the shepherds. So if I angle my screen, you can hopefully see the nativity here, and the shepherds were added to the nativity scene last week. So we talked about how the shepherds were ordinary people going about their ordinary lives when God broke in, and in fact the angels came to visit them, and we're going to think more about angels tonight.
Yeah.
That the shepherds were ordinary people at work looking after sheep, pretty cold probably in the middle of the night, and we talked about how we don't have to be in a special place to experience God. We also talked about thin places. So we said that there are sometimes special places that feel like God is closer, and that's what we mean when we say a thin place. But that doesn't necessarily have to be a church or a religious building. That could be a mountainside, for example.
Yeah.
Andy, what was your thin place? Remind us, what was your thin place?
I've got a number of thin places, but I talked about Chalkwell Beach, where I walk sometimes, especially if I've got to do a talk or something, just have some time and some quiet. And actually, Canvey Island can look quite nice in the right sunlight.
Excellent.
But that was good.
So we were supposed to have a poll, but I forgot to ask David to set it up. So instead, here we go. Here's our question for you all, and we'd love for you to put your questions in, your answers rather, in the chat. What do you think angels look like? We're thinking about angels tonight. So here's the question: what do you think angels look like? Feel free to put your answers in the chat. Andy, you're going to tell us a bit more about angels in this story.
I am actually, yeah, because we hear a lot about angels at Christmas time in the Christmas story. Angels are everywhere. Everywhere you look around the Christmas story in the Bible, there are angels. The first one is an angel comes and tells an elderly couple who are probably in their mid-80s or something, they're going to have a baby. So they were coming as messengers from God. And as it happened, those two old folks did have a baby, which would freak out some people, I should imagine. He actually became a character known as John the Baptist, who was there to say that God was going to send the Messiah, the Saviour of the world. An angel then turns up and talks to a young 13-year-old girl called Mary, who most of us have probably heard about, that she was going to have a baby called Jesus, who was going to again be the saviour of the world. Can you imagine, Em, at 13 years old, an angel turning up and saying you're going to have a baby, and all the implications of that in this day and age, let alone in the culture there where having a baby out of wedlock was majorly frowned upon. So that's two angels. Another angel turned up and talks to her fiance, someone who agreed to marry her as well, a guy called Joseph, we probably hear about. You probably recognise Joseph because he's the guy standing by Mary. He doesn't say a lot in when you have, I suppose, nativity plays with a little what's it called, tea towel on your head with a bit of string around it. And he says to Mary, marry her, to Joseph, rather, marry her, it'll be okay. Then last week you heard about angels who turned up to tell the shepherds all about Jesus and said, he's been born, go and see him. So angels seem to play quite a critical role. I said pray, which is interesting, play a critical role in the story. Do you know something as well? Whenever angels turned up, they seemed to say something like, do not be afraid or do not worry. Here's a famous fact for you. In the Bible, Emma, the phrase do not be afraid is said 365 times, one for every day. So do you think that's a subtle hint that we needn't be afraid?
Yeah, I've heard that before. I really love that. It's really interesting that when angels speak to people, when they bring God's message, the first thing they say is don't be afraid. Really kind of encouraging in terms of it sort of suggests, doesn't it, that when people see angels, that they're that there's something quite frightening or alarming or frightening is probably the wrong word, but awe-inspiring maybe. And so in the Bible, when angels turn up, they always start by saying, don't be afraid.
Yeah, absolutely. Folks, can you write stuff in the chat? We've got here, angels look like both of you. So we look like angels, says my new best friend, Sarah.
Oh, wow. Yeah. Thanks for that, Sarah. I feel like you're being kind of flattering there. I'm wondering, any other comments? What do angels look like? Andy, you've got an angel story, haven't you? I haven't heard this story. I'm looking forward to hearing it.
Oh, you haven't? Well, I can't say this is or this isn't an angel. You need to go back into the mists of time, something like 34 years ago for this one. And I've been going out with this gorgeous young lady called Ruth. Now, there's a joke there somewhere about, oh, well, blah, 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 but this gorgeous young lady is now my wife. But something, I won't go into that. But, and we were going out and we wanted to go on holiday somewhere. And her father organised a guest house for us down in Carbis Bay, which is near St. Ives, with separate rooms, of course, as fathers will organise for their daughters. And quite right so. And we were going on holiday really to work out whether, in fact, we should decide to get married or shouldn't. And this is the strange thing. There was a lady there who we were able to talk to. And I can't say she appeared like magic, but she was just suddenly there and we were able to talk to her. And she helped us both to sort out what we wanted, which was actually to settle down and get married. As soon as we had done that, and I actually went and proposed to Ruth, she was then gone. So to this day, we do not know whether she was an angel sent to help us or just a very kind lady. We'd like to think it was an angel because it makes it very romantic, don't you think, to have someone like that help us to get together and enjoy being together, basically. And 33 and a half years on, of course, we are still married.
That's great. So that's a really unusual story. So you were talking to a complete stranger about your relationship, were you?
Yeah. She appeared to be staying at the same guest house we were staying at.
Oh, okay.
And, yeah. She was there for a couple of nights as we were working this whole kind of thing out, and able just to talk to her each evening about what our conversations have been, which is really helpful especially for me.
Yeah, that's so interesting. So kind of someone who was in your life for a short time and gave you guidance that was really helpful, and it's kind of worked out because you're still married. So yeah. That's good.
Absolutely.
And so there was it sounds like there's a question mark over whether this was a real person or an angel. Really interesting, or maybe both.
Yeah.
Sarah's put an interesting. Thank you, Sarah, for clarifying. I think I was trying to say angels can look like you and me. Thank you, Sarah.
I think I preferred it as it was, actually. Yeah.
That's kind of what you were saying, Andy, though, wasn't it? That this was a person who helped you, who seemed like a completely ordinary person, and may have been a human being who gave you helpful advice.
Might have been.
Or
yeah.
May have been a spiritual being.
But I think the thing that's important, Em, was that God had sent that person to us to help us. Whether that was an angel or someone disguised as an angel, that sounds very random, doesn't it? But maybe that's what it was. But to this day, we don't really know.
So Crazy Cello Lady has an angel story as well. I've seen angels on at least 6 separate occasions. They were human shape. I'm not sure if that's what they really look like or just how they manifested. So that's interesting, isn't it? So the idea that angels are spiritual beings. The Bible doesn't tell us a lot about angels, but it tells us that they're spiritual beings. And so Crazy Cello Lady is saying they may not actually look human shaped, but they appeared to me in human shape. That's interesting.
Yeah. And of course, sometimes we hear about them actually being glory and light and shining and all those sort of things. And other times, maybe they would just look like me and you, as Sarah helpfully said. Yeah. Another comment there. Yeah.
Angels who are real people who have just been there to give me the help I needed. I mean, certainly this has been my experience. I find God most often speaks to me through other human beings who come and help me or listen to me or give me advice or, are with me. There's actually a really lovely quotation I came across a couple of years ago by a rabbi, actually, and he says human beings are God's language. Human beings are God's language. And I really love that. So the Bible talks about God sending his messengers, angels, spiritual beings, but there's a suggestion that also human beings can be ways in which God speaks. God sends human beings to each other. Interesting. And that's obviously been Andrew's.
A few more comments on the chat there. Andrew Cowley says, entertaining angels unaware. There's a verse in the Bible that actually says that we may have actually entertained angels unaware of who they actually were. And Sarah says, another Sarah says, they say that some people are closer to heaven than they are to earth. That's interesting, isn't it? That some people might appear to be angelic in their behaviour. And certainly ways that I've actually met with God in the past are sometimes through other people who have got something special about them. And certainly before I became a Jesus follower, that those sort of people were helpful to me to show me a different way to actually live, which I found very, very helpful, as I've already said. Yeah.
So I've taken down the question, what do we think angels look like? I'm going to put my angel up in the nativity scene. So this is my little traditional angel. So this is your traditional view, wings, robe. There we go.
Yeah.
Angel
blonde hair, I notice.
Yeah.
In fact, Emma looks very much like you, if I might say so.
Well, I couldn't possibly comment. Moving on from angels specifically and angels with wings and the kind of and spiritual beings, more generally, I'd love to know, have you ever heard God speaking to you? And if so, what was it like? You said, Andy, that angels are messengers. That's literally the word angel means messenger. And so in the Bible, angels are beings that bring God's message. Now, most of us won't have a dramatic experience of seeing an angel or having a message in that way. But I believe that God speaks to people all the time. And so I'd love to know, have you ever heard God speaking to you? What was it like? I'll leave that question up and we'd love for you to put your experiences in the chat. Yeah.
Should we show the video now, Em?
I think we should. So while you're thinking about your own experience of God speaking to you, Sarah has agreed to record herself. And so here is her story.
Hello. For those of you that don't know, my name is Sarah and I'm a member of Leigh Baptist Church. I'm currently away studying at university. How does God reveal himself to us? Gosh, that's a difficult question. I suppose I feel like my faith has never been like, there's never been a lightning moment when I like kind of came to faith, but I feel like it's been a more gradual thing. And I feel like sometimes I have this feeling, like this kind of intuition that something's happening or something isn't happening, and I feel like that's God talking to me. I had a friend once who I WhatsApped her and I didn't get a response, and that's not unusual, but for me this thought was playing in my head. I thought there's something not right there's something not right, and it turned out my friend wasn't right, and there was something that was wrong, and I I knew something wasn't right, and how else can you have that feeling knowing in your head something wasn't right? So yeah, I rang her in the end, and yeah, she needed some support, but yeah, that's how I feel, that's how God shows himself to me. So yeah.
Thanks, Sarah. That was fascinating, wasn't it?
Yeah, there was loads in there, wasn't there, Andy? So Sarah was talking about how she first came to know God, but also just generally what it's like day to day, how she experiences God speaking to her. So it sounds like it wasn't a dramatic thing for her, right? She didn't have that, I've seen the light sudden kind of moment. Perhaps like the angels appearing to the shepherds. It wasn't quite like that for her. I think she used the word gradual. It was something that happened gradually. I mean, what was your experience, Andy, of when you started following Jesus?
I suppose I rebelled against it, but I was always taken to church, and my dad was in charge of the Sunday school, which meant I would play up quite a lot trying to get attention and those sort of things. And then I was sent on various youth camps, and I caused a bit of trouble on youth camps and things as well. But it was the people that I met who were teenagers but seemed to love Jesus. I only really met people who were much older than me who said they were God followers and Jesus followers before. And it was those sort of people. And I suppose I began to get to know God through people and how they actually were living and how they actually accepted me, annoying though I was being. And maybe people might say I'm still very annoying. In some ways I am, I suppose. But to me, that was very interesting. And it was really as a couple of people on the camp who looked out for me and spent time talking to me and began to show me the love of God, I suppose, in many ways. And there were certain Bible verses, which I know I've mentioned on Life and Soul before, but there's one verse particularly that said, leave your worries with God because he cares for you, because he loves you. And that, it was just amazing. That suddenly kind of hit me, that there was a God who loved me and who actually cared for me. Let me tell you about something else, because interesting that Sarah said that she almost felt intuition that she should actually contact her friend. On a number of occasions, and I can't say this is regular, but in my life, I have on occasion dreamt about friends who I hadn't seen for some time and felt I should ring them. And there was one particular person I remember, and I phoned her up, and she goes, how did you know that I just needed to talk to somebody at this precise moment? And that particular person, 3 or 4 times in my life, I've dreamt about her. That sounds very strange, but it's not quite what it sounds like. And I phoned her up, and it's been the right time to actually talk to her about spiritual stuff. But that sounds a bit weird, and it may be pure coincidence, of course. But I just wonder if that is sometimes how God actually does speak. The Bible talks not about angels, but also about dreams sometimes as well, when God actually does seem to speak. How about you, Anne? How did
you've had that experience of having a dream and receiving what seemed to you a message from God in your dream? That's really interesting. I've never had that experience, so it's great to hear about yours. I resonated more with what something else Sarah said. She talked about intuition, which I thought was a helpful word to use. This kind of a gut feeling that she couldn't really explain. I think sometimes I kind of have a gut feeling, and what I would say is, because sometimes we all have intuitions about all sorts of things. How do I know if it's God? How do I know it's not just me? Well, I don't know for sure, but what I would say is when I feel a sense of peace that comes with that intuition, then I know it's God, and it's fairly rare. It's not that often that I will have a clear sense, that sense of an idea that comes to me, and that sense of peace. It doesn't happen all that often, but when it does, that's often how God speaks to me. And I've also mentioned, of course, that God speaks to me through other people. We've got a few more comments come up, Andy. Thanks so much, everyone, for sharing your experiences. So Sarah says, God actually speaks very rarely, and when it happens, it is usually a still small voice that is profoundly life-changing. Very interesting. That phrase "still small voice" might be familiar to some people who are watching. It's from a hymn, "Dear Lord and Father of Mankind." You might have sung it in school. Oh, still small voice of calm is one line in the hymn. And it comes from a story in the Old Testament that I absolutely love. A story about the prophet Elijah, who goes, he's in a really bad way. He's really depressed. He's really frightened. And God tells him to go on this long journey. And anyway, he stands on a mountain and God says that God is going to pass by Elijah. So Elijah will see God. And it says that there's a great wind, but God was not in the wind. And then there was a great earthquake and the earth shook, but God was not in the earthquake. And there was a raging fire, but God was not in the fire. And then the Bible says there was a still small voice. And it's translated differently in different places, but sometimes it's called a sound of sheer silence in one translation. I really love that. I mean, does that resonate with you?
It does. Someone said to me recently that if it's a small stick, if it's a small voice, it could be God. If it's somebody shouting at you, it's probably somebody else. I find that really, really helpful. So when my mind starts playing tricks, those 3:30 in the morning moments, things going on in my brain, I have to choose sometimes to get rid of those. The Bible talks about taking captive all those thoughts that aren't actually helpful to us. Crazy Shell Lady says, I sometimes have very vivid dreams that don't go away when I wake up. God uses my dreams to prompt me to check in with friends. And then Andrew Cowley said, had a similar phone call experience just this week. So it does sound like that God is on the move, even among our friends, which is good. Anybody else got any more experiences of God actually speaking to you? And what was it like? I guess the main way that God does tend to speak is through the Bible, because He's written down what He wants to actually say to us. And I find it very helpful to read my Bible quite regularly. I can't say every day, if I'm really honest, but I find that particularly about the stories about Jesus, to get to know what He is actually like as well. And I go to the Psalms, which is right in the middle, which I find really, really helpful. And often God will actually prompt me to think things or to reassure me, especially at the moment, because life is difficult, I guess, for most of us, that is actually going on. Yeah. So Emma, how did God first speak with you or meet with you?
Say that again.
How did God first introduce Himself to you? You know, how did?
Yeah. So I was thinking about this just this evening, actually. Someone asked me to record a video for work for our social media. And God first revealed God's self to me through other people. So I had two housemates who were Christians, and they just lived their lives in front of me. You know, they just went about life. But their faith was really, really clear to me. It really shone out through their lives, but in different ways. So one of my friends was an extremely kind and gentle person, you know, the kind of person who's always thinking about other people. And so what I would say now, the language I would use now, is that the Spirit of God was at work in her in a very gentle way. And she kind of showed that gentleness to everyone that she met. Another friend who's also a Christian used to kind of just have great joy. God gave him a lot of joy. And so he would play his guitar and sing loudly, and clearly just had this friendship with God that was really joyful. And so I would say that God spoke to me through their lives, through the way that they were. But then it was also in a way that was really hard to explain. So I'd heard about Jesus before. I'd studied religion in school, and so I knew some of the facts about what was in the Bible. But I found that suddenly it was starting to hit my emotions in a way it hadn't before. So I would say that God spoke to me through my emotions. So I started to, I would occasionally go to church and listen to a sermon and be really moved and in floods of tears. I've found that sometimes when God speaks to me, it makes me cry, like not sobbing necessarily, but it kind of will bring tears to my eyes, and I'll think, oh, I think that's God.
That again, I've actually experienced more tears this year than I think I ever have. But God has often spoken to me through laughter as well. Maybe the kind of person I am, but I tend to laugh quite a lot. you're supposed to laugh less when you're an adult than when you're a child. That probably doesn't exist in my world. I tend to laugh quite a lot, and often I've had experience of just laughing about something, and that's helped me to kind of meet with God in some strange, peculiar way, which I think is a bit kind of bizarre. It's interesting as well. You actually talk about meeting God through other people. I've already said that for me as well. That's been so important. And there's a couple of people, I call them my surrogate parents. They might even be watching this or watch it sometime in the future. And I would say when I was 16, they were the leaders on this youth camp. And I actually say I became a Christian for the first time. And we still have a contact. And we have virtual dinners every couple of weeks still. And they kind of keep an eye on me and tell me when I've got it a little bit wrong, which happens most days. To be told off about something or other which I've said or done or something as well. But I am so grateful for those people. And there may not be angels in the sense of the Bible's not angels, but certainly they're angels who help me to keep on the straight and narrow, shall we say. Gina said, agree with Sarah about small voice. And, it isn't words you would normally say to yourself and takes you by surprise, but makes sense in the circumstances you're in, but also very certainly through great friends that come along at just the right time.
Yeah, I can certainly resonate with that. Words that take you by surprise but make sense in the circumstances. I had an experience, and I think, apologies, I probably said this on Life and Soul before, where I was having in a difficult situation. I had a dilemma and I was praying about it, and and I had one of those rare moments where I heard a quiet thought came to me, and it brought peace with it. And the thought was, I don't mind what you do, I'm more concerned with how you do it. And that sentence just kind of landed, and it just made total sense in the circumstances that I was in, that actually God was okay with a number of different things, but it was how I went about them. Crazy Cello Lady says, God also uses coincidences to speak to me when the same message is given to me from several sources over a short space of time. Interesting. Yeah, I've heard other people say that to me as well, that they'll hear the same word or the same passage from the Bible or the same story a few times in a short period of time. So we don't know who this is. We think this is probably someone coming to us from the Facebook group, and the way Facebook works, if you're in a closed group, it won't reveal who you are for sort of privacy. But thanks very much for your comment. When praying with people, I sometimes get a random image or a word or phrase, and then when I've told the person, it will mean something to them. That's very, very interesting. Yeah, so it's a word or a phrase that resonates.
Yeah. That may be what's called a word of knowledge. Possibly they're actually talking about when just to get an idea and a thought, maybe a little picture in your mind's eye almost, and God can use that to speak to people in a way which is kind of helpful, sort of a metaphor almost of what God is actually trying to say. Again, I talked, I believe, on Life and Soul a few months ago about an experience I had when we went to that place, New Wine, the conference centre we went to, and I went to chat to someone, almost like a sort of counsellor, to think about life, because I was in not a good place in many ways. And just as I was talking to her, she said, just be quiet and see what God says. And I got the words, trust me, in my head. And it actually changed how I thought and I felt. And I don't always trust God because I'm a bit of an idiot on occasion. But that certainly helped me to, something just happened. This small, clear voice, give myself some space with this helpful lady, just to chat and to pray about something as well.
That's great. Andy, I thought I put the Facebook group link up for anyone who's not a member and would like to carry on the conversation between live streams. The Facebook group is facebook.com/groups/life and soul community. Be great to see you there. Andy or I have to approve you as a member, but we will let you in. It'd be great to have you with us.
Do you know it's 9 o'clock already? So I'm busting in because it's already 9 o'clock. Can you believe that?
Time flies when you're having fun. My laptop says 20:59, but yeah, we're nearly there. So we're back here next week, Andy, aren't we?
We are, and we're talking the wise men next week, or
Indeed.
the kings, or the magi, different phrases.
the Magi. We'll be talking about them next week. Andy, they're actually my favourite characters in the, apart from baby Jesus, I probably should say. But I love the story of the wise men. Really, really love it. So looking forward to next week, and we can add some wise men to our nativity next week, and maybe Andy and I will have some more Christmas jumpers, some different Christmas jumpers to share.
Oh yes, I've got another one I can't wait to wear next week. Very excited.
Excellent. So folks, it's been great having you with us. Thank you for the comments that you've made tonight. It wouldn't work without your interaction, because we don't just want to talk about the stuff in our minds. We'd much rather talk about the things that interest you. So thank you for participating, and we'll see you next week.
Thank you. Bye everybody. Oh, she's gone.